my boy.
Hello all, and welcome back to another CD-i Spotlight. You may notice that I'm doing a voiceover this month. I am rearranging my game room, and I wasn't able to get it done before needing to record this video. And you know what they say, the show must go on. So in any case, last month I took a look at the Palm Springs Open. I'm not the biggest fan of golf or golf video games, but Palm Springs Open was pretty fun. For a game from 1991, it has good controls, great graphics, and a fun commentary. If you're looking for a fun CD-i sports game, give Palm Springs Open a try. This month's CD-i Spotlight is going to focus on one of my favorite CD-i titles, Voyeur. Voyeur is an interactive FMV game that was released for the Philips CD-i in 1993. A version of Voyeur was also released for DOS and Macintosh. It takes elements from other FMV games at the time, but limits the action down to just watching events. Think Night Trap, but without the traps. Voyeur is also a game that features many mature situations, such as simulated sex scenes and a murder mystery. That being said, let's get into the story. You play as a private investigator that was hired to investigate the Hawk family, specifically Reed Hawk. Reed Hawk is as corrupt as they come, and one of the Hawk family members hires you to find enough evidence to bring him down. I'm being vague on the family member because he or she is randomly selected every time you play the game. In order to fully beat the game, the player needs to collect enough evidence against Reed Hawk and also witness a murder and film it for the police. There is a good ending and a bad ending, but there are also various in-between endings the player can get depending on how much intel they get on Hawk. The time to catch Reed Hawk is now or never. The Hawk family gathers at the beautiful Hawk mansion for a family get-together and to prepare for a major announcement. Reed Hawk is going to run for the President of the United States. I mean, with all the alleged corruption, he'll actually fit right in. But enough about politics, let's get into the gameplay. Voyeur at its core is a point-and-click FMV game. The main goal, as the title of the game suggests, is to be a voyeur. The player has the option to spy through various windows of the Hawk mansion in order to gather enough evidence or dirt to end Reed Hawk's career. Your camera is set up at the building across the street. You can only peek through certain windows at specific times during the game, so time management is crucial if you're trying to view a certain scene. The player can typically get a glimpse into most of the family's personal lives in one playthrough, but to fully flesh out the story, you're going to want to play a second or third time. There are 3 different icons to watch out for when watching the Hawk Manor. A magnifying lens signifies that the room is empty, but there may be incriminating evidence lying around for the player to find. The ear icon signifies that there is someone having a conversation in the room, but the blinds are closed, so you won't be able to see the person. Finally, the eye icon signifies that there is a conversation between multiple characters that you can watch. These are the FMV scenes that were filmed for this game. Voyeur takes place over a weekend. The Hawk family arrives at the mansion on a Saturday afternoon and ends Monday morning. Certain scenes only play during specified time periods each day. If you miss your chance to view a scene, it's gone. As you play, you won't be able to watch all of the scenes from the same day in one playthrough. You have to choose which scene you watch and which one you don't wisely. Voyeur does allow the player to back out of a scene, but unless you've played the game before, it's hard to tell if the scene is important. Watching a scene, backing out of the scene, or viewing an empty room will cause the timer to progress. According to the instructions, you can also send video evidence to a family member at any time during the game. Given how quickly time progresses, I can't imagine this being an easy task. I always just stick to watching the manor because I like to watch the FMV scenes. Apparently there's a chance that a family member could inform Reed Hawk about your presence, assuming they were paid off. It adds more challenge to the game for sure, but given you don't need to even do it, why bother? So the gameplay and duration of the game is nothing to really write home about. I mean, I personally love point-and-click games and FMV games, but I realize they're not for everyone. That's especially true for games like Voyeur, since the player is able to miss so much due to the timer. Missing the scenes causes characters' backstories to be missed, so multiple playthroughs are required to fully flesh out the story. Speaking of the story, Voyeur's story is relatively short. You can complete the entire game within 1 to 2 hours. The gameplay is only extended if the player wants to play the game again in order to really learn the backstories of every character. Also, given the time limits, it's easy to miss a scene altogether. As I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of mature situations in Voyeur. I've read that the CD-i was originally intended for mature audiences, and given the amount of adult-themed FMV games hitting the market, Philips tried to cash in on the craze. Voyeur really does try to push the envelope with how many half-naked women they can throw in. I mean, hell, the game even starts off with a role-playing couple. Honestly, the phrase sex sells comes to mind when thinking about how this game was developed. Not only are there sexual scenes between various couples, there are also scenes between Reed Hawk and his sister and niece. And while gross, it is used to drive the narrative that Reed is a slime ball. Here's something that's very weird about the game, to me at least. When you start the game, it starts you off at a lockout screen. Looks more like a save to me, but the instructions call it a lockout screen. To officially play the game, you have to enter the code to remove the lockout screen. If a player doesn't have the instructions, they would never know what the code is without looking it up. The code is 3333, by the way. I get it's trying to simulate a computer or device that locked you out due to inactivity, but I would rather put the disc in and get started on the game without this step. Subscribers to my channel know that this game made my top 10 list of bizarre DOS games, but I didn't give Voyeur a spot on that list as a negative. I honestly think that this game is actually really fun, and the acting is really good as well, for what it is. Robert Culp plays Reed Hawk. You may know Robert Culp from such media as I Spy, Greatest American Hero, and one of my personal favorites, Santa's Sleigh. Grace, and I apologize I'm going to butcher this last name, Zabriskie, plays Reed's sister. Grace is known for her part in Armageddon and Child's Play 2. The rest of the actors or actresses had roles in a variety of films and TV, but honestly nothing that I've seen. Speaking of movies, here's a fun fact for you. Voyeur was actually inspired by Alfred Hitchcock's film Rear Window, and it does have a similar feel. You ultimately have to watch a family member of the Hawk family murdering someone in order to win the game. Like I said before, I'm a fan of point-and-click games and FMV games, so for what it is, I really enjoy Voyeur. If you're not a fan of either of these genres, then Voyeur isn't for you. Voyeur's story is interesting and kept me engaged throughout. This is also a CD-i game that doesn't require the digital video cartridge expansion, so it's a must-have for anyone with a CD-i. If anything, it's definitely a departure from the other CD-i games that I've showcased so far. Voyeur did well enough to receive a sequel. Voyeur 2 was released for PC and Macintosh. The Philips CD-i was supposed to receive Voyeur 2 as well, but it was never officially released. A finished beta version of Voyeur 2 was completed, however, and I've read that this version has been distributed to abandonware sites, so I believe it's out there. I haven't played the sequel yet, so I'm not sure if it ties into the first game, but from what I've read, it looks like a new story. All that being said, Voyeur has replayability, looks great for the time it was made in, and has a good story. I give Voyeur 4 cameras out of 5. And that does it for this month's CD-i Spotlight. Join me next month as I dive into CD-i demo discs, and, as always, thank you for watching.